Brunson, all shifty. Jalen Brunson to the cup.
How do you stop that? It's like stopping a bowling ball.
You're listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Shark Tank here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. Joshua Grain, joined alongside by Brady Campbell on YouTube, 88.1 FM, WCWP, and wherever you get your streaming. Whew, we're on camera for the first time, and I gotta say, it's very different. It's so much different than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is gonna take some getting used to. Hello, YouTube. Our first Sports Shark Tank since getting the cameras installed. Very, very excited though. A lot of things going on in kind of all the major sports right now. At least all the main four men's professional leagues that we're gonna break down today.
Absolutely, we're going into the NBA, NFL, MLB. Pretty sure I'm forgetting the NHL, but we actually have a phone line in which our viewers and listeners can tune in and share their thoughts on whatever we're talking about. 516-299-2688. Once again, that's 516-299-2688. So let's start off this episode by talking about the New York Knicks. They defeated the Denver Nuggets 122-112 for their fifth straight win. At the Garden, Brunson, dominant as usual, 30 points, 4 rebounds, 15 assists. Anunoby, 23 points, and 5 for 7 from the three-point lines, including some clutch threes down the stretch. On the other hand, you had Jamal Murray leading the team, 33 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. But the main shock to everybody, it was Nikola Jokic. A very cold night for him. He got into foul trouble early in the game, had 2 fouls, I believe, the first 5 minutes of the game. Only ended up getting 17 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. This is only his 5th game with this season with less than 20 points. So a very unlike Jokic performance at the Garden. But for the Knicks, this is an absolute huge win for a team that's looking like they're pretty much a very good contender in the East.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, when you were looking at Nikola Jokic, for a guy as good as he's been his whole career, for the little amount of times that he puts up less than 20 points, when that happens, it's very, very tough to win a game when a star player of that caliber struggled that much. Now, Jamal Murray, 33 points leading the way, but Jokic was second on the team in points with 17. That's going to make things very difficult to win, especially against a Knicks team that is red hot right now. They've been on fire. They were struggling a little bit at the beginning of the month. Things weren't looking great. There were some questions surrounding kind of how the team can recover from almost like a little bit of a losing streak there at the beginning of the calendar year, but they've recovered in a big way. They finally beat the Hawks. They blew out the Grizzlies, and now a big-time win against, well, not the defending champions, but from a few years ago with still a lot of those pieces in place. So a statement win for the Knicks, and maybe not like the most surprising loss for the Nuggets, but kind of the way it went down with Jokic and everyone except for really Murray having an off night.
Yeah, and you talk about we always talk about Tibbs and his usage of the bench or lack thereof in the past, but this game was quite the opposite, actually. Precious Achiuwa, 26 minutes off the bench. Yeah, Cameron Payne, 12 minutes off the bench. Deuce McBride scoring 12 off the bench. Also, Landry Shamet getting some time in. So still a 9-man rotation when you factor in the starters. But you look at the minutes for the starters: Jalen Brunson, 36, Cat, 30, OG, 39, led the team. Josh Hart, 34, Mikal Bridges, 37. It seems like a changing of a new era is upon us for the Knicks, at least when it comes to usage, because the less minutes they get, the more the depth players get the shine.
Absolutely, and their depth players have shown shown throughout this stretch of their most recent victories too, and the fact that they've been able to kind of utilize their top guys, their stars, Brunson, Towns, throw Bridges or Harden there a little bit, yes, less, and Anunoby now 39 points leading the 39 minutes leading the team and put up 23 points as well. You love to see that if you're a Knicks fan. You love to see that for Coach Thibodeau, who, the knock on him, one of the biggest knocks is the overusage of a lot of his top players. And I mean, even, down towards the bottom of the minutes, but Precious Achua and Miles McBride Deuce able to put up double digits in points as well with only 22 minutes. That's definitely a great sign for the Knicks. Only January, still a couple months to go here in the regular season, but they're getting hot around the right time. Of course, the All-Star game trade deadline coming up, and I think they picked a perfect time after kind of a little bit of a struggle towards the beginning of the month to now get red hot heading into February.
Absolutely. And you look at that start that they had to the year. I believe in their first 8 games, they were 3-5, including some losses against the Detroit Pistons. Loss from Minnesota. But since that loss in Minnesota, at the Garden against Minnesota, they've pulled off 5 straight wins. And on paper, the teams they've played in these past 5 games doesn't really, I guess, pop out, if you will. Atlanta, Brooklyn, Sacramento, Memphis, and Denver. But still, you got to beat the bad teams to prove yourself to be a contender. And it's only going to get harder from here. You have Los Angeles next. That's going to be on national television. The Houston Rockets, Toronto Raptors, who are rebuilding. But then you look at Saturday, February 8th, the day before the Super Bowl. They get to play the Boston Celtics at the Garden, 8:30 p.m. on ABC. I think that's a lot. I think that's the game that a lot of people have their eyes focused on.
Absolutely. That's gonna kind of be the measuring stick game for the Knicks after this stretch. Who knows? They could win these next 3 games. I mean, the Lakers and Rockets are going to be tough matchups. The Raptors, they should probably beat, but you never know. But that's going to kind of be the game. Okay, the best of the best, defending champs. Can the Knicks at the very least compete the full 60 minutes, if not pull off the upset? Because come playoff time, obviously these 2 teams are likely going to be in it. The Knicks want to prove that they could really be a contender right up there with the best teams in basketball.
Absolutely. And with the trade deadline approaching, I believe it's February 6th. So either a week or less than a week until we see some faces shift to new places. But the 2 biggest names right now has to be De'Aaron Fox and Jimmy Butler. We'll get started with De'Aaron Fox right now. He did address the trade rumors in a press conference yesterday. He said, "I've never been a person to worry about anything else or go and do anything else." And there are multiple reports out there speculating that Fox prefers going to San Antonio to play with Victor Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, and the rest of the guys down there. And a lot of that has to do with, I believe, the influence of Greg Popovich. Obviously, he's still nursing an illness, so all the best to him. But I feel like Fox to the Spurs would be very interesting, especially for Wembanyama's development.
Yeah, if you're the Kings, though, you might try to ask for Wemby in return. I don't think the Spurs would give that to you.
There's
But
no way.
definitely an interesting idea to see De'Aaron Fox end up in San Antonio. Obviously, we still got a little bit more time till the trade deadline, but definitely an interesting idea. A lot of drama starting to pick up around the league. This one, not as crazy as the one we'll get to in a second, but De'Aaron Fox has just been phenomenal over the last few seasons. He's only gotten better and better. The points average throughout from season to season since his rookie year in 17-18 has really only gone up. Well, actually went down a little bit from last year to this year, but 25.1 averaging a game. And usually he's putting up a lot more than that. He's one of the Kings' better players. The Kings maybe having a little bit more of a down year than the last couple where they, kind of seemingly almost came out of a rebuild a little bit sooner than they would have liked to. but the vibes in
Sacramento,
Sacramento were
yes.
very high during that playoff run last year, which obviously didn't go super far. But when the Kings are back, it's going to be a fun time. Will they have De'Aaron Fox though? Is the question. Of course, if they trade De'Aaron Fox, what do they get back for them? Are the Kings still kind of somewhat in contention, or are they going to be sellers this year?
Well, I mean, Fox, he is averaging 25 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds in 43 starts this season. So, I mean, he would be a very hot commodity, carry a big price tag with him. But we'll move on to Jimmy Butler to close out this segment. And we all know the drama surrounding him. He's been suspended 4 times this season by the Heat. Of varying games. He's now suspended indefinitely for his recent conduct, and it just seems like by the second, it feels like his price is just going down, down, down. Even Pat Riley, it's been made public that he really, I mean, the relationship between him and Jimmy Butler hasn't really been great. It's been really rocky, and so that's why the Heat are very cautiously optimistic that they can trade Butler before the deadline. They did lower the asking price for other teams, so this drama has been lingering on since end of 2024, and it just seems like we should reach a conclusion very, very soon.
Yeah, we should. And I've been even seeing him kind of being linked to the Warriors, but sources are saying Steph Curry and Steve Kerr have concerns about how he would fit on the Warriors. And I kind of agree. Now, of course, the NBA is the league that I follow the least out of, I guess, the 4 major ones. But I feel like, there may have been some things I missed, but like, how did this get to be to this point where just a few seasons ago, Jimmy Butler was leading the Heat onto these incredible playoff runs to the Eastern Conference Final, and it's not like the Heat are that bad all of a sudden, though. And it's not just Jimmy Butler. You see it throughout the league as well. But obviously, we don't know exactly what's going on behind closed doors. But it's going to be interesting, especially the way how things have played out now that he's suspended indefinitely after, I guess, his conduct towards the team and sitting out games prior to that. Are teams going to necessarily want him? I'm sure, eventually there comes a point where the skill becomes too much of a demand for teams. But at the same time, I think teams are going to be really careful about this.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that as well. Take a look at his stats. He hasn't played a full season since his sophomore season with the Bulls in 2012, 2013. The rest of his games, rest of his seasons hovering around that 60, 70, even somewhere around 50 games played per season. So he's not all, I guess you say, healthy. He's more of like a drama thing. I don't want to speculate. I mean, listen, I'm just a guy who just watches sports for a living and just commentates on it. But with the Butler situation, it just feels like it's just unlike something we've really seen, at least in the modern era NBA. I know you have load management, but a player making his thoughts very known and very public that he wants out of an organization, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. So yeah, I mean, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, we've seen it throughout every sport, really, but I feel like the NBA as of late has kind of had a few too many of these situations. Of course, we've talked about on the show, like guys just kind of sitting out for who knows what reason. But
Yeah.
this is a whole different extreme. With now him getting suspended for kind of, I guess, violating the team conduct, just refusing to play, which happens, but eventually it's going to get to that point where the relationships with the front office and that just breaks down, and now the Heat have to get. I'm sure they'll get a great package for him. They just got to find the one that fits.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will do it for this segment on the NBA. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking some NFL football in our next segment. We'll be talking about the Jets hiring Steve Wilkes, as well as some news regarding Matthew Stafford's future with the Los Angeles Rams. You're listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM, WCWP, on YouTube at WCWP Studios, and anywhere you get your streaming services.
Do you remember where you were when this song played for the first time? And if you weren't around yet, do you know what was happening in our country at this time? I'm Cindy Schwartz, host of Rockin' History. Join me Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. for 1 hour of classic rock from the 60s through the 90s that reflects the historical events of the time. That's Rockin' History with Cindy Schwartz, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org, LIU Public Radio.
Enjoy classics from Bach to Broadway with Dean Carahalis and the New York Brass Choir at the Plainview Old Bethpage Library on February 1st at 4 p.m. This elite group of some of the area's finest musicians will be performing selections from their recording, Gorgeous Brass. Registration is required. For more information, visit POBLIB.org or call 516-938-0077. The community calendar is a public service from your friends at LIU Public Radio.
What this world needs is a few more rednecks.
That's right, folks. Join me, Rick Lucidi, for 2 hours of great country music right here from the North Shore of Long Island. You never know what hand you'll be dealt.
You got to know when to hold up.
Or what party you'll end up at.
Hey, bartender.
For sure, a great time will be had by all. So please listen to Rick's Redneck Ranch Radio every Saturday from 5 to 7 right here at 88.1 FM at WCWP.org.
This is extremely interesting. The New York Jets just hired former Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn to be their head coach. And he just hired former 49ers defensive coordinator Steve Wilkes to be his defensive coordinator.
You're listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Welcome back to the Sports Shark Tank here on 88.1 FM, WCWP, as well as here on YouTube. Hello, everybody, as well as Spotify, wherever you get your streaming services. Joshua Grant, joined alongside by Brady Campbell on this Thursday evening from the campus of LIU Post in the Abrams Communications Center, Studio 3. In our last segment, we talked some NBA, the Knicks defeating the Nuggets, as well as some trade drama regarding De'Aaron Fox and Jimmy Butler. But now we're going to shift our focus from the hardwood to the football gridiron, where we have some news in Jets country. They have hired, it's not officially official, but there's a lot of multiple reports saying that Steve Wilkes will be the new defensive coordinator for the New York Jets. Of course, that position was vacant as Jeff Ulbrich was their defensive coordinator to begin the season in 2024. But when Robert Saleh got fired, he was obviously the interim head coach put in place there. So a little bit background on Steve Wilkes. He did not coach the NFL in 2024. Instead, he was a volunteer advisor at Charlotte, at the University of Charlotte, for the 49ers. And speaking of the 49ers, he was in the most recent NFL job he had. He was the 49ers defensive coordinator in 2023 when they lost the Super Bowl for the second time this decade to the Kansas City Chiefs. And so we talk about Steve Wilkes. He's had some head coaching stints. He actually had a head coaching stint, I believe, with the Arizona Cardinals towards the latter half of the 2010s. They went 3-13 that year. So I think that was the year before they got Kyler Murray. So we'll see what he does with a new quarterback. Hopefully, we won't speculate on Aaron Rodgers just yet, but since he's obviously a defensive coordinator. But now that's two defensive coordinators in two very key roles within the Jets organization.
Yeah, you could tell the Jets are really stacking up on their defense, which it seems that offense is definitely more of the issue, as you alluded to, Josh, for the Jets going into the offseason free agency draft and, of course, into the next season. But for an already talented defense that kind of took a step back this year, they've definitely seemingly hired the right guys to help that side of the ball get back over the hump this year. As you mentioned, Steve Wilkes, not too much head coach experience, not that he's a head coach this upcoming year anyway, but you mentioned the Cardinals year. Bit of a rough one. Did help them land their franchise QB, and then he was an interim for the Panthers after Week 5 in 2022, and had a 500 record. So overall, he's a really solid coach, and as a defensive coordinator, he coached some pretty good defenses. 2017 Carolina had guys like Luke Kuechly towards the end of his career, a few years removed from their Super Bowl appearance. The Cleveland Browns in 2019, when they were, one of their first years of kind of being relevant again. He was able to help lead that defense, of course, with Baker Mayfield on the offensive side of the ball as well. And then you mentioned just last year, NFC champion defensive coordinator. One of the better defenses that I feel like we've seen in years was the 2023 San Francisco 49ers, led by Bosa and Warner. And was Chase Young on that team last year, I believe?
I don't know if he was. I might have to look.
Possible.
It's very possible.
He was one of those years. Either way, just an incredible defense top to bottom. So I think it's a great overall hire by Aaron Glenn and the Jets staff. Of course, Aaron Glenn, one of the great defensive minds in football too. And why not hire another one to coordinate that defense?
Yeah, and absolutely. And you talk about this Jets defense. On paper, it looks amazing. You have a very, very good cornerback in Sauce Gardner. You have a great defensive line with Quinnen Williams. You have CJ Mosley when he's healthy. He can be a very versatile back, although he's coming up to the latter end of his career. Will Anderson IV has emerged as a really good option as well on the edge. But just for these past few seasons under Robert Saleh, things just didn't go well. Like, things just felt off. Like, there were some games where the defense was as advertised, but there were a lot of other games where the elite of the elite offenses just decimated this offense and just put numbers on this team. And I'm just not sure if they can get back to what they were when they had a good season.
Yeah, it was really interesting for a great defensive mind like Robert Saleh. We saw, of course, what he did with San Francisco defense as well, one of the top defenses in football for his time there. Ironically, now he's headed back there as their defensive coordinator. Yeah, like you said, something just fell off last year. I mean, really around the whole team. I know there's always like jokes to be made about the Jets, but for a team that on paper seemed very talented, like there wasn't a whole lot of drama behind the scenes, at least kind of early on the season.
Yeah.
But even before there kind of was with, I don't know, Woody Johnson, and when they let go of Joe Douglas, like the on-field product, like Rodgers never quite fully seemed like himself. He had like 1 to 2 games here or there, kind of in that early to middle portion of the season. The defense also kind of had, moments of brilliance, but even in games they won, they were kind of, barely scraping by. Sauce Gardner didn't have his best season as advertised. A lot more penalties, if I'm not mistaken, on the defense as well, specifically pass interference, which of course that's a penalty that's always seemingly up for debate. But overall, just kind of a lot of years the Jets maybe are better advertised than they turn out to be. But yeah, last year they really, really fizzled out. They didn't have too many injury issues until maybe towards the end of the season when players were getting banged up, and something didn't click.
Yeah, something just did not feel right at all with the Jets in 2024. Now they have an offensive coordinator position to fill. Seems like the favorites there are Los Angeles Rams passing game coordinator Nick Caley and Detroit Lions quarterback coach Tanner Engstrand. I do think those two, on paper, obviously their positions within each organization are very big strengths, especially with the quarterback coach and Tanner Engstrand for the Lions, having been with Jared Goff and having options such as Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. But in the NFC, sticking with the NFC, we have some news to share about Matthew Stafford's future. Excuse me, with the Los Angeles Rams. He intends to stay with the team in 2025. He likely needs to rework his current contract, though, to make sure everything fits financially within the cap space. In 2024, Stafford threw for 3,762 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a completion percentage of around 66%. So it seems like Matthew Stafford, towards the latter half of his career, obviously, the first year he came to Los Angeles from that Jared Goff trade with Detroit. It paid out very well in their first year, won the Super Bowl. Can't get much better than that. Stafford, a likely Hall of Famer, if not first ballot. Well, that'll be a different conversation for another day. But now, with seemingly the band back together, the usual core pieces with Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and a healthy Tyler Higbee, what are your expectations for the Los Angeles Rams in 2025?
That's the thing. The expectations for the Rams are so interesting because coming into this one, it was tough to tell because Matthew Stafford, I've always been a fan of his. He's was kind of a very underrated quarterback for some time with Detroit just because they can never really get over the hump and get back to any real prominence for the first time since like pre-Super Bowl era. But that trade, as you mentioned, worked out perfectly the first season. But even so, like they're in a tough division. This year was kind of a weird year. It seemed like no one really wanted to win it. Every team was kind of in it until the last few weeks. But the Rams were able to come away with the division over Seattle, with San Francisco and Arizona kind of taking steps back again. But yeah, they got into the playoffs, and obviously that they have some great talent, but they just felt like a team where in a very top heavy NFC that they wouldn't really have a whole lot of success. They go up against Minnesota, and once again, Minnesota, I mean, they dominated Minnesota. Matthew Stafford and the offense especially looked incredible, and the defense got stops when need be. And Minnesota just once again completely fizzled out in the playoffs, and they competed with the Eagles towards the end too. The Eagles look like they put the game away, and Stafford orchestrates an incredible drive to get them right back in it and give them a chance right towards the end. Obviously, the weather wasn't in their favor, being from out in Los Angeles, but this team has a lot of promise. Matthew Stafford, sure, he's getting up there in age, but the talent is still there for sure. For him and the team around him, heading into next season. Of course, you listed out basically all the guys. So I'm gonna stop kind of underestimating the Rams, it seems, because in a very tough division, they find a way seemingly to make the playoffs one way or another, and even make some noise in it when a lot of people don't really expect them to.
Yeah, they play in a very good division, especially with the Cardinals. And how they're developing as well with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, James Conner, the Seattle, although they're kind of on the decline. And then you have the 49ers trying to get back to winning ways after missing the playoffs the year after making the Super Bowl. So I think it'll be definitely interesting. I do foresee another division title for the Los Angeles Rams. I just don't know how hard it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be much harder than it was in previous seasons. I just feel like something might be a little bit off. I'm not sure. I can't speculate.
I feel like next year too, like as long as everybody's going in healthy, we'll see if Christian McCaffrey should be back for San Francisco, yes. That division and the way the Cardinals are trending, that division could be completely up for grabs. Whereas most divisions, you could kind of say like, all right, like this team's likely not going to win the division, might not even make the playoffs. This one, like all four teams, I'd say heading into next year, unless something disastrous happens, or at least a playoff contender in my book.
Yeah, and even with all those injuries, it was a very competitive division. But that'll do it for this segment on the NFL. In our next segment, we'll be talking the New York Islanders. They are hot as of late, having won 5 straight. Now they now begin a 4-game road trip tonight in Philadelphia. And we'll also give you some updates on the Utah Hockey Club and an update on their name. So stick around for that. You're listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM WCWP, watching on YouTube WCWP Studios, and streaming on wherever you get your media.
You can support WCWP with one simple click. Log on to WCWP.org and click on the support tab. WCWP is your home to LIU Sharks Athletics, The Rock Show, and much more. Visit WCWP.org and click on the support tab. It's that simple. WCWP is a non-commercial radio station, and your support goes to help students and our staff. Visit WCWP.org and click on the support tab. Thanks for listening to WCWP and LIU Public Radio.
Few moments are as pivotal in the history of our nation as when President Abraham Lincoln delivered brief and historic remarks in Gettysburg in November of 1863. Join in the discussion of this historic event at the Syosset Library on February 6th at 2 p.m. An expert will provide analysis of Lincoln's speech and study the impact of his words. For more information, visit syossetlibrary.org or call 516-921-7161. The Community Calendar is a public service from your friends at LIU Public Radio.
Bob Dylan, one of our culture's most influential and groundbreaking artists. Join George Walsh every Monday night at 9 as he plays the songs of Bob Dylan and those who have been influenced by Dylan's genius. Whether you are a longtime fan or new to his music, let George take you on a journey of musical discovery Monday nights at 9 p.m. The iconic music of Bob Dylan is blowing in the wind and playing on the air Monday nights at 9 on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org, LIU Public Radio.
Lee and alone. Anders Lee. Team leading 22nd goal.
This is the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Welcome back to the Sports Shark Tank here on 88.1 FM, WCWP, as well as on YouTube, WCWP Studios, and streaming on Spotify and wherever you get your streaming services. Joshua Grain, joined alongside by Brady Campbell on this Thursday evening from the campus of LIU Post in the Abrams Communications Center. In our last segment, we talked some NFL football, and now we're going to get to the New York Islanders. They have won 5 straight, and they're suddenly back in it in the Eastern Conference playoff race. Most recently, they beat the Colorado Avalanche. I believe it was 5-2 in that final. We also saw the second game of both Tony DeAngelo and Scott Perunovich.
I think it's Perunovich.
I think it's Perunovich.
First game for him.
Second game for Tony DeAngelo. I never thought I'd say Tony DeAngelo was a New York Islander. If you had told me that in the year 2025, I would just told you to get out. But anyway, yeah, 5 straight wins for the boys in blue and orange. They did pretty well for themselves. Simon Holmstrom 2 goals, Romanov getting a goal, and Horvat finding the score sheet yet again, as you heard from John Buccigross of ESPN. Holy shnikes, indeed. Anders Lee, his 22nd goal of the season, team leading. It seems like it's a very big resurgence for him as well. And that's really what's surprising me most, as both of us are Islanders fans, me and Brady are. And I feel like his resurgence has really rejuvenated this team.
The Lee surgence has
that's nice.
Rejuvenated this team. But as you were alluding to, huge homestand for them. They came in struggling, and they dropped their first 2 of the homestand. Got shut out by Ottawa. Kind of an ugly game there. Lost to Philly, who they needed points against. But then they rattled off 5 straight to close out their homestand. Sure, Sharks, not very good. Columbus has surprised a bit. I think they've fallen back a little bit down to earth over the last few weeks, but still big win for them there. They play Philly again at home and pick up a big 2 points, but it's really these last two games. Avalanche are a wild card team this year, but still two of really the top teams talent-wise in hockey, not to mention two teams that just exchanged some of their top players.
Yeah.
2 days before the Islanders played the first of these games.
It felt like they were conspiring against the Islanders.
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
It just felt too good to be true. I was like, wait, these two teams are swapping superstars and they're both playing the Islanders. What is going on? But somehow they find a way to come back against Carolina. I believe it was Bo Horvat. Actually, no, it was Brock Nelson who scored the game winner against Carolina. And then a very good performance from Ilya Sorokin in net for the Islanders. But now there's going to be a lot more pressure on him because now Marcus Högberg is out with an injury. He's on IR.
Great. He was great. He was really good. And Sorokin's, well, I guess maybe not his absence, but when they needed him to, he almost like kind of took the starting role. Not really, but like when he had to, they called upon him more than maybe a lot of people thought they would. And he stepped up big time for them. Now Jacob Skarek from Bridgeport is up there. They probably won't utilize him too much unless they have to, which they might very well have to, because they got a big game playing Philly for the third time this month tonight. 2 huge points on the line. Islanders got to get this one done, preferably for them and
preferably
fans.
in regulation. Yes,
for sure, to not give the Flyers a point. But then back-to-back Saturday, Sunday, the Florida Gauntlet against the Lightning and Panthers. So we could see Skarek or Högberg. I don't know the exact timeline. Probably Skarek will still be here.
Because Varlamov is still hurt.
Yeah. But yeah, so we could be seeing him, but nonetheless, massive games coming up. Of course, the Islanders, they only have 6 more until the Four Nations face-off 2-week break. But especially this one, the Flyers are absolutely a team you're chasing. The Panthers are one of the top 3 teams right now in the Atlantic, the other Eastern Conference division. Don't necessarily have to catch them, I suppose. Kind of the same with the Lightning, and then 3 Western Conference matchups to close it out. But I mean, you still gotta win the games you're given. But this one tonight is absolutely massive for the Islanders.
And I believe it is Sorokin in net for the Islanders tonight against Ivan Fedotov for the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm going to assume the same lineup because you can't change, you can't break what's already fixed, or however you say that phrase. But you look at the standings, despite the Islanders being in 7th place in the Metro, they are still 4 points away from the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have 55 points. And the wild card race, it's shaping up to be just like last year and the year before that and the year before that, where it's just absolute chaos as we come up to these last few months of the season. It feels like the Western Conference just stands there and be like, what are they doing over there?
It really does. Although the West has been interesting themselves.
Yes.
We'll get to them in a minute. But yeah, Islanders win tonight. They're only 1 point behind the Flyers. They jumped them. Not to mention, we can't say this too often as Islander fans, but the Islanders have games in hand. Now, it's only January, but they're right in the mix with games in hand. Usually, I feel like it's the other way around every single time. And they have several games in hand on a couple of these teams, including the Flyers. They have 3 on them, 4 on the Penguins, who the Islanders are actually ahead of by a point. So it's, once again, we still got 3 or so, or 2 months to 2.5 months to go. Obviously, we have 2 weeks off for the Four Nations face-off. Trade deadline still has to happen, which is another interesting story now because General Manager Lou Lamoriello seems to buy no matter what.
Yeah.
and now he's in that position again. So we'll see what happens. But the Islanders and the Rangers, although the Rangers had that tough loss to Carolina, but they're right back in the mix as well. So New York hockey seemingly dead in mid-December is now back towards the end of January.
I don't want to, get too far ahead of myself, but the Islanders do have 4 games in hand of the New Jersey Devils. But the talent gap,
it's about 13 points too.
yeah, it's about 13 points for that one. But we're shifting our focus to the Western Conference now, and we have some news regarding the Utah Hockey Club and the mystery of what is their name going to be. So as of last night, came down to 3 teams, and fans would be able to vote on these 3 names in the Delta Center, their home arena, as well as 2 logos that may fit what the franchise is looking for. But as we were doing this show, it seems like, well, I'll just give you the 3 names that were initially chosen. It was the Hockey Club, which is the most boring, the Utah Mammoth, and the Utah Wasatch because of all the Yeti things and the whole legal debacle over there. But we have some breaking news in terms of a name. So the Utah Hockey Club, they heard all the backlash about what is a Wasatch, and they decided to replace Wasatch with my personal favorite option for a name, the Outlaws. I think that is absolutely perfect name for this hockey club.
My favorite would have been the Yeti. Unfortunately, I believe it's Yeti Coolers, right?
Yeah, and they make
cooler company.
It's like an outdoor brand.
They refuse to let the hockey club share that name, which is very unfortunate. I agree, though. The Wasatch, I don't even know how to pronounce it.
I thought it was like Sasquatch, but like word, like kind of like slang. But I don't know, cause
yeah, I kind of thought that too. I looked it up, but that shouldn't be the name.
No, yes.
Also, Utah Hockey Club should not be the name. That is a soccer name, okay?
It's just a placeholder name.
That's soccer's tradition, like, football club, soccer club. All right, here in America with the other 4 major sports, we want cool nicknames for our teams, not Utah Hockey Club. Which Yeti was cool. Unfortunate that it can't be picked. I'm glad though they added in the Outlaws, and I mean it should be Outlaws or Mammoth. Either way, I'll be satisfied with that. Not that I'm a fan of Utah per se, but
they've been doing pretty well.
It cannot be the hockey club.
It absolutely cannot.
I understand why it's still kind of an option because that's why they go by now, but it really shouldn't be.
No, it really shouldn't. And you look at the Washington football team. Obviously, now they're known as the Washington Commanders. At first, people didn't really like that name change, and I feel like now that there's a lot of thought being put into this, the ownership group in Utah has really listened to the fans. I feel like they've done a great job of transitioning this franchise from Arizona to Utah, obviously taking their players, but seemingly a timeline conflict of like franchises as the Arizona Coyotes franchise is right now, expired. I don't know, for lack of a better word, just like temporarily paused. So I feel like Utah Outlaws or Utah Mammoth, which one would you go for and why?
I understand why you like Outlaws. I think that's a really cool name. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like the whole like mountains and like Yeti Mammoth type, almost like Ice Age type of feel, if you will. So I mean, there is a team. I know pro lacrosse isn't the biggest, but they have like the Denver Outlaws. So I like to. There's no like major pro team with the name Mammoth. Actually, there might be an indoor lacrosse team, but
lacrosse.
Like there has not been a major 4 sport, and if there was a while back or whatever, that didn't last very long. I think the Mammoth would be a cool name for a team for especially from Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, we've been talking for quite a while, but we still have one more segment to go to, and that is baseball, MLB. We have some breaking news in that as well, and we'll get to that right after this break. You're listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM WCWP right here on YouTube at WCWP Studios. and streaming wherever you get your streaming services.
The Rock Show is heard weeknights from 7 to 9 p.m. here on WCWP. I'm Jeff Kroll.
And I'm Pat Kroll. On Thursday, January 30th, we'll be playing songs with "don't" in the title. You know, don't do this or don't do that.
But we hope you do tune in to The Rock Show. Thursday, January 30th from 7 to 9 p.m. here on 88.1 FM and online at WCWP.org.
A live concert which blends the magic of well-known and beloved songs from Broadway musicals will be presented at the Syosset Library on February 23rd at 1 p.m. Enjoy songs from My Fair Lady, The Music Man, Les Miserables, Cabaret, Funny Girl, Wicked, and more. Registration is required. For more information, visit syossetlibrary.org or call 516-921-7161. The community calendar is a public service from your friends at LIU Public Radio.
The classics live here on LIU Public Radio 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. Tune in to the Rockin' Sunday Show with Neil Lana every Sunday afternoon from 12 to 2 p.m. We bring you classic rock and 80s pop. You'll hear everything from Madonna to the Beatles. The Rockin' Sunday Show every Sunday afternoon from 12 to 2 p.m. here on LIU Public Radio 88.1 FM and WCWP.org.
Cam to left. Back goes Carroll. That's the ball game. Hassan Cam walks it off. Padres go back to back in the ninth. Win it 5-4.
You are listening to the Sports Shark Tank on 88.1 FM WCWP.
And welcome back to the Sports Shark Tank here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org, on YouTube, WCWP Studios, as well as wherever you get your streaming services, Spotify, Pinecast, whatever. My name is Joshua Grening, joined alongside by Brady Campbell. And for our last segment today, we're going to talk MLB free agency. Spring training is almost upon us. February is 2 days away, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows that means that baseball is on the brink of coming back to our television screens. But we still have some things to clear up regarding free agents. Some recent notable MLB free agent signings that we've had in the past 24 hours goes like this. The Mets re-signed Ryan Stanek to a one-year deal. I know Brady's very pumped about that as a reliever. Was pretty clutch down the stretch in the season as the Mets made their playoff run. Ha-Sung Kim, as you heard, I believe is Don Orsillo for the Padres and their TV network. He actually joins the Tampa Bay Rays. 2 years, $29 million deal with Tampa Bay, who now have to play at the Yankees spring training facility after the damage done to Tropicana Field due to the effects of Hurricane Milton, I believe. The Tigers inked former Yankee reliever Tommy Kahnle to a one-year deal, and Royals and Carlos Estevez agreed to a 2-year, $22 million deal. Estevez coming over from the Philadelphia Phillies, the Royals on the up and up with Bobby Witt and Cole Reagans, and a very good cast of characters in Kansas City. That's a lot of But we do have some breaking news. I wish we had a glass breaking sound effect. Maybe Stone Cold barges in. But we do have some breaking news, and Brady has it pulled up and ready to explain to the world. Go ahead, Brady.
Yes. So former New York Met and former a lot of things, National, Tiger, Dodger, Ranger. Did I get them all?
I'm
Diamondback.
Well, he was a Diamondback?
Yeah, he might have started his career there. Either way, Max Scherzer has signed with the Toronto Blue Jays per John Heyman of the New York Post. 1-year deal, $15.5 million guaranteed. So the Blue Jays, who at least early in the offseason were struggling, they were in on every free agent, it seemed, and could not reel in a single one of at least the big names, Juan Soto, all those guys. They've now made a little bit of noise, and then they bring in an aging Max Scherzer, but as long as he's healthy, Max Scherzer is gonna do his thing, and still one of the solid pitchers in baseball. I'm hoping this. I doubt it will, but I'm hoping it takes the Blue Jays out of the Pete Alonso running somehow. But overall, the Jays kind of just bolstering their rotation a little bit more.
Yeah, and they also picked up Anthony Santander from the Orioles. I think that's a good move. I do think that's a very good move, especially with the retirement of Kevin Kiermaier. Anthony Santander, I think, not only is he a good offensive bat, I do think he can make some good plays in the outfield as well. And you were right about the Arizona Diamondbacks for Max Scherzer. But now I feel like everything just shifts its focus to, I believe, 3 players in particular. The aforementioned Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, long thought to be just gone from Houston, maybe coming back to the Astros after all that. And now Jack Flaherty, still a free agent, but had a great resurgence with the Los Angeles Dodgers, winning a championship ring over there. I guess we'll just rip the Band-Aid off with Pete Alonso. What's going to happen with him?
I could not tell you. I mean, obviously, on really
blame Scott
inside
Boras,
sources. Yeah. If I had to, I'd probably blame him. Yeah. But yeah, it's like one day after another, even like hours apart. It sounds like the Mets, aren't gonna get him. It sounds like closer and closer he's a Blue Jay. It really does just feel like a 2-team race at this point. Who knows? Maybe some team can come out of nowhere. It felt like every sign was basically pointing to him staying with the Mets after every other free agent first baseman basically went off the market.
Yeah.
But you never know. I think I saw something today that, it seemingly more and more likely that he could stay with the Mets, but yeah, it's really anyone's guess at this point. I feel like I know Mets had a fan fest type of event last weekend, and Steve Cohen was not very happy with the situation. I guess how Boris and Pete, probably more so Boris, was handling it. But it sounds like they still want to have him. They just they got to work things out, and like you said, we're approaching. It's practically February. We're approaching spring training here, which is very exciting. But I honestly think Pete Alonso could play a major key for the Mets, to the point where the difference. I know last year he wasn't great until kind of the playoffs, but
he's just very reliable on the defensive
end.
He's
always has been a presence in the clubhouse. I think he's honestly gotten better defensively too over at first base, and despite his struggles at times, I mean, it's a long season. I think if you don't have Pete at this point, like, where do you kind of pivot for first base? There's been talks of them moving Mark Vientos to first. I prefer to still have him at third.
Well, we have a bit of a list here from MLB.com. You also have Pete Alonso at 30 years of age, had a 5.0 WAR, wins above replacement. That ranked second, only to Christian Walker, who signed with Houston. I do think that's a very good deal with Walker and the Astros. You look down the line, Justin Turner, 40 years old, maybe a little bit of a reunion with Justin Turner. Joey Gallo, although Joey Gallo. If
what I'm
they
hearing is they better keep Pete.
Yeah, if they get, the only way I could see them getting Gallo and justifying it is if Gallo is willing to revert back to his prime Texas Rangers self, because he was just mashing homers like it was nobody's business. 450 feet plus, tater tots to the upper deck at, I think it was like Globe Life Park in Arlington before they moved to Globe Life Field in I'm probably mixing it up.
I think you have it right.
Yeah, I think I'm
actually.
right. We'll see about
It
that.
doesn't matter. They're like 5 feet away from each other anyway.
Yeah, I think it's like they were like right next to it. But you look at Pete Alonso. You also look at Alex Bregman, third baseman for the Houston Astros. I mean, there's been lots of talks about Alex Bregman, whether he would stay, he would go. Seems like he's leaning towards staying with Houston. Kyle Tucker, one of his teammates, went to the Cubs. Ryan Presley also left, I believe, to join the Cubs as well. The Cubs are stocking up, hopefully to retool. I do think they could have been in the mix for Roki Sasaki, though. That's just my opinion with Seiya Suzuki and especially Shota Imanaga, probably kind of just like mentoring him and being a guide for him as he navigates the Cubs clubhouse. But unfortunately, the Dodgers umpire knows no bounds. But well, that's a discussion that I believe some of our crews have explained earlier in the week. But Alex Bregman, third baseman, Houston Astros, what do you see playing out with him?
That's another really tough one. It seemed like it was all but done that he was leaving Houston. It kind of feels like the Pete Alonso situation just in the AL here, where now you really don't know what's going to happen, but it's seemingly possible that he's going to stay. And I think the Astros are a team that have ever so slightly fallen back down to earth a little bit. Obviously, there's teams like the Rangers and even the Mariners to an extent that have caught them, where it seems like it's those three teams battling for the division now every year. And sure, Alex Bregman, he's getting a little bit older now. He is now 30 years of age, but he's still a reliable third baseman and has been a solid hitter. Sure, he's been aided by some things earlier in his career as well, as was his whole Astros team during one playoff run. But overall, just a very solid player. His numbers took a little bit of a dip, but I think whichever team ends up getting him will have a very solid third baseman still at their disposal one way or another.
Another solid player that I'm personally surprised that hasn't been picked up yet by any other team is Jack Flaherty. He was with the Detroit Tigers to begin the 2024 season and then went to the Dodgers. Obviously was a big piece of their 2024 World Series championship. You look at these stats, 13 wins, 3.17 ERA, and 194 strikeouts and 162 innings pitched. I feel like whoever gets him and gets him at good value, I feel like this could be one of the better free agent signings in recent memory.
Yeah, I think this could honestly be a bit of a steal for whoever ends up getting him. In the end, I'm sure he'll end up going back to the Dodgers because why not? No, but yeah, like you said, really one of the best seasons of his career last year and always flew under the radar a little bit early in his career with the Cardinals, and then bounced around a little bit, Baltimore, Detroit, and then, of course, ending up with the Dodgers and help really leading them and their depleted kind of rotation, especially towards the end of that season into the postseason, to a World Series. This is a guy coming off, like I said, one of his best years, and it is, as you said, a little surprising no one's picked him up yet, but no matter who gets him is going to get a very solid piece for their rotation.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that is the end of this episode of the Sports Shark Tank. Thank you so much for listening, watching, wherever you get your streaming platforms and whatnot. We're talking more sports tomorrow. Though I do believe it's going to be more LIU centered, as it normally is on these Fridays. So Monday, probably get back to more of the greater sports world. But for Brady Campbell and Joshua, and for Brady Campbell, I'm Joshua Grening saying so long. You've been listening to LIU Public Radio on 88.1 FM, WCWP.org, and streaming on YouTube, WCWP Studios, and wherever you get your podcasts.